It's been a while since our last video in this series, so we thought it was a good time to update it for Season 16 and onwards with the current patch meta in mind. Tailor-fitting advice to apply to low ranks is always a little bit tricky, because we'll be fighting against two separate concepts, where one, you can take what appears to be the easy road, that's sort of the fastest route to power that might win you more games in the short term, but may not necessarily improve you enough as a player to be ready for higher ranks when you get there. Whereas, perhaps, in some cases, losing and learning is better for your long-term development as you hone more difficult-to-learn skills, but ones that are more applicable as you continue down your Overwatch career. That's a massive bomb to drop at the beginning of the video, but it kicks us right into both our best and worst pick, which is Ana. Truth be told, I actually think Ana may be one of the very best heroes to climb yourself out of a rank, but also she could be the very worst pick at the same time. Ana's someone I would describe as a carry hero, but I think sometimes when people hear that term, they forget the most important aspect of it, which is you have to carry, as in you have to play mechanically good in order to actualize their value. I see a lot of low-ranked Ana players. They often will miss crucial shots in front of them, but instead focus on the wrong things. My DPS are bad, they can't win duels, my tanks are feeding, etc, etc. But the truth is, Ana can carry the whole game. And I'll tell you why. A lot of people either ignore stats completely or over-invest focus on the wrong ones. Now, I'm not talking about gold healing, gold damage, the gold medal system. Those aren't helpful here at all. But what is helpful is looking at average healing per 10 minutes. If you're dealing 4,000 or 5,000, which is typical of a lower ranked Ana, think of it this way. At higher ranks, it's common to have like 7,000 to 10,000 average healing per 10 minutes. So what that means is your team has nearly half the health of what a higher ranked team has. Yeah, we already know that having an extra player is a massive advantage. Well, on heroes like Ana, who have huge gaps in performance, if you play as good as a higher ranked player or even +1, +2 ranks above where you are, it's like your team has an extra half of a player or something. That's how much extra value you can get out of a carry pick like Ana, and why if you're struggling at the lower ranks with her, it sucks to say, but you really have nothing to blame but yourself, because not only will you just flat out carry games and win them easily with Ana if you're playing well, the SR adjustment system is just begging to boost you out of lower ranks if your mechanics are good. These ideas aren't mutually exclusive, and one often leads to the other. You play better, you're going to win more, and also get boosts from the system. So now, pivoting from Ana, let's look to some other support heroes and how we should treat deciding whether we should select them or learn them. If we feel that we can't get the value out of Ana or actualize her, if we're looking for a different route, the next two healers that I think you should focus on are Moira or Mercy, because both of them are much more management and game sense based rather than mechanics. They do have important movement and rotations through the fight that you're going to have to learn, but you won't have the pressure of hitting very difficult abilities to a high degree of frequency. Now, there is a bit of a pitfall with these two because they're both very situational. Mercy pairs best with pocketing a DPS, and Moira pairs best with tanky comps that want to brawl. In Arisa, who sits behind a shield and just spamming and barely takes damage, your Moira's not going to get that much value, whereas a Zarya, who needs to be taking damage in order to charge herself up, well, you can get a load of value with Moira, with Rein Zarya, or even triple tank or triple support with Brick. So it's going to be based on the context of teammates you have, but also I'll advise, and this is a big rank up tip for you guys, in the games that you're playing, especially from the support position, because you're playing these heroes that don't require as much mechanics, you should be shot calling anyway to the best of your ability, tracking ults and trying to get the team into a useful position in order to win, but also try to notice who seems to be popping off. At a lot of lower ranked games, perhaps you do have a Widow or Pharah who needs to get healed, and they're difficult to heal as Moira, so Mercy would be the better call for you there. However, I've seen many a games at lower ranks where a team fight isn't won to break a choke until Grav or Earthshatter gets landed. So perhaps in those games, you might lean a bit more towards a character that's going to pocket your tanks rather than pocket your DPS. But conversely, if a teammate is reliably winning their duel and maybe your tank is just feeding and no amount of healing is going to help them, maybe you decide to shift your utility to a different pick who's going to help out a teammate that you think is stronger on your team. Ah yes, playing support. We literally get to decide who lives and dies on our team. And I glossed over this point, but I want to be sure that it lands home. Make sure if you're playing Mercy that you're not healing tanks too much of the time, because Mercy heals for 50 a second, and her big ability is obviously res, which is why she pairs better with like dive tanks and Pharah, characters that want to go in, trade, and might lose their life, but but if you res them, you get value out of that cooldown. Whereas characters like Rein and Zarya, well, they're going to be brawling and dying in spots that you probably can't go off and res because everyone's fighting together, making that harder to do. Not only that, Zarya dies, loses her charge, that's not going to help you at all. You needed to keep her alive in the mid-fight. And conversely, Moira can heal 80 health per second, recently got that efficiency buff, which turned out to be pretty darn good, at least for ranked matchmaking. And remember, when you spray a teammate, there's a lingering effect of 65 healing for the next 4 seconds. So just spray them once, let go of it, and you're getting more healing than Mercy can do just out of that. Not to mention, you also can put a healing orb on top of that, which does another 75 healing per second. You see what I'm saying here? There's just no point to try to use Mercy to heal tanks. It doesn't work. Not only that, damage, amp, and res, just the way those mechanics work, you kind of want characters that split off and do their own thing and to pocket them. And managing these and where they're applicable in your games is going to be key in your ability to win those games from the support position. To round out the support position, I will quickly toss in Lucio, Zen, and Baptiste, the remaining characters, and I think they also fit a bit more into the Ana carry category, which is why I mentioned them last. Lucio especially has been reworked to the point where he's no longer a very easy hero. In fact, they've just forced him more and more into requiring you to be very good at his mechanical ability. And although he's incredibly crucial to the high level of play, you have to know if you don't specialize in him and put the work in to really command his kit, you're going to struggle. Playing Lucio on the ground is about as bad as playing Pharah on the ground, right? Like, they're both meant to fly, basically. And there's sort of a misconception about Lucio play that going for Reddit clips is a bad thing, and I think that gets a bad rap because really, you want to be able to have such good command over your mobility that you do both. You need to be able to go off, make space on your own, win duels against squishies, get Reddit plays, and also have the game sense and awareness and control of your mobility to quickly get back to your team to help them when they need it too. You have to manage them both, all the while being able to hit shots while bouncing and all of that. That's required of you to get value out of Lucio, and I think it's a lot harder than people realize. Like, Lucio is a carry support. Incredibly well designed, a lot of fun, but that's the reason why a lot of people struggle with him and think he's a bad hero, is that he's just so hard to get value out of that you might feel like you can't do anything with him. So if you put the time in, you definitely can carry games with Lucio, but it takes a severe amount of FPS skill actually to do so, and somehow he still retained this rap of being an easy hero when he's just not. He's the Genji of supports, but I will say a hero like Lucio or Ana fits a lot better as you scale up the ranks, whereas Mercy and Moira, they're more of your quick fix to get a short-term gain in rank and are going to fall off as you go up the ladder, so kind of an issue. If you specialize in heroes that are kind of lower ladder picks, eventually you're going to reach a spot where they get less and less value, and you need to be able to bring out some of these other characters. So rounding out the support category, we talk about Zen and Baptiste. Zen, just like Ana, is a carry support. I mean, do everything a DPS does and also heal and have one of the best ults in the game. It's just outrageous. The only reason I don't suggest Zen over Ana a lot of times in this case is that I think in matchmaking, tanks want to feed desperately, and if you just have the combination of offense and insane healing, I think putting that mechanical skill towards Ana applies more often. However, Zen has more frag potential and a better ultimate, which can save you from the Gravitons and Genji Blades of the world. So it might be a little bit more even than I'm letting on, but in any case, moving on to the last pick, Baptiste, I'll say he's probably the wonkiest pick right now because you're really going to struggle to heal a dive character, Genji, Winston, etc., to any degree of reliability. So you just can't play him with them. He's okay with Rein Zarya, but still not as good as the other ones, and takes comparable amounts of skill. Because make no mistake, you really need to be getting the hybrid utility out of Baptiste to put down offensive pressure with his weapon and also heal. You have to be able to do both. If you just focus on healing, you're getting like half a character, and you might as well go to Moira instead. You need to be able to whip out Baptiste's ult and get a kill or two, and be able to pressure out Pharah's in the mid-fight even without your ult. But overall, I kind of see him to be like a budget Zen for ranked. However, he does, of course, have great synergy with Bastion comps, which people really struggle to counter. So that might be a quick route to power, but I don't think he has a lot of applicability outside of those Arisa comps, so I don't suggest in outright maining him. Maybe dabble in learning him a bit, though. Now let's move on to the tank picks. On our video recently covering Arisa and her outrageous strength, I saw a lot of comments saying that, well, this doesn't apply to my rank and Reinhardt will still be king, but in truth, Reinhardt in my opinion anyway, it takes more coordination now to get value than Arisa does. The issue with Arisa, especially playing her on attack, is that it might be very difficult to coordinate around playing with the shield placement, because what you want to do is inch it forward, where you take a little bit of space, hold that ground, wait for the next cooldown, toss the shield up safely, and you have to very slowly take space, whereas Rein does that whole maneuver much easier because he just pushes the barrier forward. But the problem is Rein doesn't have all the other tricks that Arisa can do and needs way more help from his team, frankly, which is why I do prescribe playing Arisa quite a bit at low ranks too. This isn't just a high rank phenomenon. I think you're going to find that you yourself can have as much solo impact as any tank can while playing Arisa, whereas normally playing like Winston or Reinhardt, you feel like you got to really be in sync with your team and they have to be in sync with you, pumping resources in you to get them to work. Arisa's not so much, because you shouldn't expect to be taking damage, basically ever. Just manage your shield perfectly, take space with it when you can, hit your shots and halts, and you're pretty much a value turret, which is my favorite new phrase, by the way, for characters that work well in solo queue. Ana's a good example for this. In the tank category, Arisa is as well. Watch some of our guides on aiming her weapon, how to shield dance, getting value out of halts. Doing all that will make you feel like a death machine. But the number one thing that you should know, and I did show this in my last Arisa video, but I didn't explain it as well as I could, when you rotate, you want to make sure to mirror the movement of the enemy team, which is to say, if Orion's pushing you and he's pressing W, you want to be pressing S in equal amount parallel to him, which is easier to do now because you can shoot and move at the same time. But if he's gaining on you, you have to just flat out run away and stop shooting. But you always want to be parrying back from aggression until you win the frag battle. Now, this makes players at lower ranks really uncomfortable because that oftentimes means you have to give up some objective in order to win the frag battle, but that's what Arisa does. And if you do that and you understand that, over the course of an entire match, you're going to have way more tanking value than they do and are at a much higher percentage chance to win. And one last point on Arisa, don't get too hung up on having the perfect kind of bunker comp. You don't have to have Hog or Diva or anything. If you have two main tanks, just run it. Here's a little secret for you. I actually think two main tanks is quite good right now, mostly because the queen of the off-tank position, Diva, is in the shakiest spot she's ever been, which is crazy to say. But I think especially in matchmaking, Diva is really hard to get to work nowadays. Reason being, the developers have done some severe top-down balancing with Diva so that her defense matrix makes sense in a perfectly organized team. And it's been nerfed to the point where now it's so weak that you basically have to have perfect coordination like we're a pro team to get value out of defense matrix. You barely have enough to go around. It's telegraphed when you use it. Basically, all of the positives that I've just talked about with Arisa, it goes the other way for Diva, where you absolutely must be in good coordination with your team to get value out of what she does, which is definitely possible and has the peak of being really strong, but I think Diva is in a really bad spot for matchmaking and pretty unlikely to change. It's sort of the Mercy effect, where if Blizzard is too wrapped up in how a character performs at the highest level of play, it has severe ramifications into ranked where nobody really can emulate the teamwork of them anyway. So pick Arisa, even if you have Rein, Winston, Wrecking Ball, Hog, whatever. Arisa can get just so much value on her own. It can break the rules of what you think for the team comp. Now, again, not to say you shouldn't counterpick and synergize with your team. Think of that. Just don't worry about overall team comp, right? At lower ranks especially, you want to be thinking about countering their heroes and synergizing with your best players. But I think you'll find there's very little that is going to trouble you on Arisa. But I'll have to say, she does take some mechanics to play. Kind of have to gloss over this from the tank position, but tank mechanics are way harder than people think, which is especially true on these next two picks that I say with a bit of hesitation, Wrecking Ball and Roadhog, where both of them absolutely can dominate squishies. Whether it's Wrecking Ball, if you just learn the basics of the swing and pile drive combo, you'll just be deleting things left, right, and center. Roadhog, even if your aim's not great, if you learn how to secure really clean hooks, not even just the crazy shots, but the wide open ones, he'll be getting you guaranteed kills, not to mention he synergizes with Halt. The secret to using that, of course, is pressing the hook button when you see the lines of Arisa's Halt start to stretch out, because the timing is about right, where the Halt expands out, signaling it's going to grab something, then the delay of your hook, if you aim at the ball, pressing shift at that moment, by the time your hook comes out, they'll both collide together in perfect sync. So you'll be able to repeat that combo for free kills over and over again. But I see a lot of players at low ranks hate when people pick these heroes because just like some of the other carry heroes we've mentioned, they play them badly, right? So when you're playing ball, remember that you move 10 times faster than your team. I'm exaggerating, but functionally, right? So you need to be an expert on syncing up with them, because just going in, getting a shield, and getting shot at isn't value, okay? I really need to stress this. You're gonna have to do a lot of waiting around for them to come in, which either means just shooting from afar to build ult, farming health packs to stay alive, but only go in and hard engage when your team is ready. Same with Roadhog. If you're flanking around, getting shot at, feeding them ults, and don't get hooks, well, you should have just played a hero that provides a shield or barrier for the team. Probably Winston or Reinhardt would have done more for you in those situations. So the last of the tank category, Rein and Zarya, how are they doing right now? Well, I think they're pretty strong as a combo because they do something that no other tanks really do, right? They still take space confidently. I don't think they're like out of the ranked meta necessarily, and they're definitely easier to play than Winston Diva is right now, since of how many things just smash dive characters in their face. Their tank ults are incredibly powerful in teamfight winning, so I think you still can get them to work. You just have to make sure your team comp has enough healing to prop them up, otherwise they're just gonna fall over. Which is another nice thing about characters like Arisa, Ball, Roadhog. They kind of don't care what your healers are. You can have one healer and it still work, whereas Rein, Zarya, you'll want to not only make sure that your team picks those healers, but sticks on you, and your Moira is not throwing damage orbs nonstop, but is in sync with you going in to take damage, so you actually can get the space and make your hero work. Just remember though, when you're going up against these Arisa comps, you don't do anything against her until you close the distance. So you have two options. You either can go grab the objective, which you're going to be better at fighting, but if your team's dying along the way and then you might get like a tick at a time, that's not really good enough. Consider chasing down squishies that are easy to pin down, or just running over the Arisa yourself. Just keep in mind that the Arisa barrier blocks off a lot of healing sources, Moira and Ana especially, so try to get them into position to still heal you past it while brawling the Arisa, and you can smash her face in. But until you do that, she's just at a big advantage. And this might be an area that requires more videos, because I think people are really feeling that Arisa's the queen right now, which is true in ranked, but not just because of the balance, also because people play the matchup wrong. And I think especially when we start seeing the pro teams play up against Arisa more, we'll all as a community learn more quickly how to handle that matchup. Whereas I see a lot of Rein players just get scared up against Arisa, and as if they don't know what their goal is, right? Like they just sort of flounder at mid-range getting shot at forever and never gain any positional advantage at any point, even at the high ranks, just at all ranks, it seems. So we'll probably have to cover that more as we move on. Moving on to the damage category now, we're talking about this one last because it's probably the last one you should consider if you're at a low rank. Because the truth is, if you're at a low rank and you pick damage and you can't kill enough things to rank up out of a low rank, well, you probably just need to pick an easier role. Not to say the other roles are easy by any means, but there's way more heroes that are less mechanically demanding in the other two roles. But again, that might just be a quick fix to gain a short-term amount of SR, and you might be wanting to go the long haul to improve over time to eventually be a better player. And let's be fair, there's a lot of easy DPS that are pretty good right now, ones that even I can play to a decent degree. So who are they? I think Mei is low-key the DPS queen right now. Maybe I'm just biased because I saw that Clockwork comp work so well recently, but because there's so many things to punish dive right now, Mei doesn't really have a weakness, because it used to be, well, the wall couldn't get consistent value because they would just play dive tanks, ignore her, jump over her, and there'd be a Pharah up in the sky and Winston coming in over the top, so the wall was just kind of irrelevant. But with the game slowing down to such a degree, whether you're going up against a Reinhardt comp or an Arisa comp, the wall is just going to consistently get value every fight. Whether it's blocking off the Arisa bunker's line of sight or splitting off the Rein to kill him for free, Mei's just kind of sick. And it's not like Lucio is easy or super powered with his speed boost like it was before, meaning that getting away from things like Blizzard or regrouping away from a wall split is very easy. And Mei, of course, power creeped over time. Many patches ago lost the fall off damage on her icicle, so she's not even lacking that much firepower either. Doesn't have the most for sure. There's plenty more damaging characters, but damage is kind of overrated. Way back when I said we were entering the control meta of Overwatch, and we're well in that now, where most characters need to have a lot of bells and whistles, a lot of doohickeys to be any good. And you pick them almost based on their cooldowns and ultimates, well and beyond their basic mid-fight fighting capabilities. So with that point, we easily transition to the next one, which is Twrp. Twrp is just incredible. Again, the game slowed down to such a point where the turret is just a complete pain in the you-know-what for the enemy to deal with, and although you're weak to range damage, just avoid it, spam into the general mass of the enemy, and get the odd pick-off here or there, and you're going to be right on your way to some sick Twrp value. I think he does less than Mei, because Mei so distinctly can take over a team fight with Mei Wall, whereas Twrp is just sort of a damage dealer, but his ultimate, I think I would say, is a bit better, more dynamic, and because you can spread it in a kind of haphazard way, it somehow feels easier for your team to boop or crowd control with like Arisa Holt or something into it. And again, Twrp would be weaker if dive was a bigger thing, but now Torp's been buffed to a spot where he's one of the better answers against dive characters. With his base health, Tracer, Genji, Sombra don't really like fighting him, not at all. His turret, watching the backline, is one of the best ways to deal with Sombra harassment, because if she has to deal with the turret, she can't be farming your team for EMP, but we'll leave that to the side because ain't nobody playing Sombra at low ranks. Sombra's really hard to get to work at low ranks with the amount of coordination that's required. I would not advise playing her there. But moving on to round out the DPS category, Reaper is just always a good pick for low ranks. He's been buffed and buffed and buffed. Now, so much so that Shadow Step is nearly a sick ability. I think it's just good now, but that's good enough because he's just so good at running at players and getting pretty much free damage. If you use Wraith to dodge the big cooldowns that can wreck you, like Mccree Stun or Roadhog Hook, then you're just guaranteed to get kills. Putting an asterisk on this character, of course, because those tricks start to have diminishing returns as you go up the ranks, so be careful over investing time into Reaper. But a character that will definitely have upper rank potential, and that's Mccree. One of the biggest carry potential DPS in the entire game, because he kind of just does everything. Not good at long range, but who needs it? He can burst down tanks, insta-win duels, and pressure down medium range damage unlike anyone else, and he's getting an insane buff on the PTR. It's such an insane buff that I almost think it's a debate by the developers. Don't have time to get into it, but I'm like, is Rollock just coming out tomorrow and you're just pretending to make this outrageous buff to make it seem like we're moving in another direction with the patch? Because it just doesn't make any sense. Okay, enough on that. But if that buff goes through, then he will be insane. His recoil's easier to control, and he shoots faster. It's like a win-win-win for Mccree, so you'll definitely want to keep a lookout for him and probably just learn him. And he counters Reaper, who's really strong at low ranks as well. Last but not least on the good picks is Soldier, oddly enough, but not necessarily always as one of the two DPS. He can be kind of weak like that, especially up against bunker comps where you need a lot of shield to break. A character like Zen, for example, can easily be swapped out for Soldier, who does provide healing for himself and his team. Not much, but it's significant. A bigger burst of healing than Zen can do, but more importantly, will pressure down the barriers and tank line to impose an advantage. In those 3 DPS looks, Soldier is actually like an incredible pick. As one of the 2 DPS, he's kind of forgettable, but if you have single healer or multi-DPS, he's kind of that catch-all Overwatch hero that can just fit in a lot of weird comps and still get value. Some heroes I think you should stay away from at low ranks, I've already said. Sombra, of course, really hard to synergize, although is a top meta pick at the same time. Once you get to the upper tiers, extreme skill shot intensive heroes like Widow and Hanzo, Ashe. If you aren't already soaring through the ranks you're at low ranks, farming up a ton of mad gains with the SR adjustments, you probably should be learning other heroes, because here's the thing. This is the big secret of low ranked play that a lot of people don't realize, and probably need to make a video about this as well, that the lower down you go at the ranked ladder, the movement of players is weaker and weaker, which I think a lot of people get fixated on the idea of aim skill, but movement skill is probably even bigger in Overwatch because there's a lot of substitutes to requiring aim. But the problem with that is that if you feel like you can hang playing skill shot characters at plat or gold especially, it doesn't mean your aim's strong, because your enemies don't know how to move yet at those lower ranks, making your shots incredibly easy in comparison to the head jukes that players will do as you start to rank up. Movement in Overwatch is so powerful that you basically can move in such a way that feels impossible for a player to hit. When the movement skill goes up, the shots you need to hit on these precision characters require you to flick on basically a frame of animation in order to hit. And sometimes it requires you to just predict where they're going to be moving without even seeing it. That's how fast it moves. So I notice this a lot when I watch lower ranked players play, and they might be able to put in a lot of work against lower tier movement, but that's really entry level skill. You have to like totally dominate that level of tier before you even get into the stuff I'm talking about. So that's gonna wrap it up for today's best and worst heroes video. I hope you did enjoy it and found it useful. If you did, please be sure to leave it a like. It really does help us out, lets us know that you're enjoying the content. And if you haven't already, please subscribe and be sure to hit the bell icon so that you get notified when our videos go live. Linked in the description is our Twitter, where we tweet out news, updates, and dank memes. That's been it for me. I've been FREEDO for your Overwatch. See you guys next time.